Anyway, while I'm trying to sort this out with one hand, let me try and tell you about who I am as well. That might help. So I work at Facebook. I've been there for 2 years, which basically means I've been there longer than 75% of the company, which is a pretty insane statistic and makes me one of the old boys. Scale, best. Should we go for that? Is that working? Should we just mirror? Okay. Can one of you guys try this for me while I'm like having a chat? Because that would be way more entertaining for the audience. Yeah, okay, so I've been at Facebook for like 2 years. I work on the platform team, so I work on the tools that developers use to build stuff against Facebook. So that's things like the API and developer tools, so things like the Graph API Explorer, or SDKs, and all that kind of stuff. I spend most of my time working with startups and companies. So we have this platform, and there's all these people who want to use it. And it's quite a versatile, big, scary platform. And part of my job is to sit in between what we have and what people want to do and what they have, which is a really interesting space to be in. It's great to be invited here as well, because you guys, everyone in this room, is at the confluence of one of the biggest debates, really, in kind of modern tech. And that is web versus native. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened last week. Thank you very much. Well done, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Good. Okay. Good. I feel comfortable now. Got the water. We're all good. We're all good? Excellent. I can't see my notes, though, so this could be interesting. So about 2 months ago, I was invited to come and speak. And here we are today. And there we are when I was invited to speak. I was thinking, super excited to come. This looks awesome. And then about 2 weeks later, we launched the new version of our iOS app, which is twice as fast and isn't built with HTML5 web views. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, this could be interesting. And then on Tuesday last week, this dude, Mark Zuckerberg, gets up and says this. When I'm introspective about the last few years, I think the biggest mistake we made as a company is betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native, because it just wasn't there. And so at that point, I'm thinking, should I cancel? Like, how's this going to go down? Like, how do I do this? So I think my job today is to do two things. Firstly, it's to kind of like unpick this a little bit and try and explain what we mean and what this means to you. And also to talk about Facebook's platform and how it helps, or how our focus in building it out is to help mobile app developers, both iOS, native, and mobile web, grow their apps basically across any platform. But to understand where we ended up when we launched the new version of our iOS app, it's worth explaining why we made the decisions we did. And some of these will resonate with you guys very well. 2 years ago, we were a web company. We had a bunch of guys who wrote PHP, JavaScript, and a lot of C++ on the back end. And we were used to being able to do a few things. Firstly, we were used to being able to change things at will. Like, we release stuff many times a day. 2-3 times a day, our web code stuff is released. And we have controls that mean we can turn on and off features at will. Contrast that with the native world, where a lot of stuff is baked into the binary and it's shipped to Apple for approval, and the release cycle is much slower. That felt weird to us. The second thing is that we already had this crack team of guys building a pretty awesome mobile web experience. And it felt logical to us that we should reuse this. And the third thing is that there's all of these platforms out there, and we needed to reach scale as quickly as possible. And you know what? It worked for all of those things. The thing that we thought we'd be okay with is that Facebook feels quite simple. Newsfeed is just a list of stuff, right? It's just a list. But as our product progressed, that list was getting full of images. And it turns out people really love to scroll. And so you have this product, Newsfeed, which is basically the core of what Facebook is, and it's massive, and it's heavy, and it's long. And so what we're finding is people are scrolling, and guess what? It's slow to load, and it's jittery. And when you're an iOS user, you're used to this texture of apps. And when something comes along that doesn't quite map to that texture, it doesn't feel too good. So it turned out the thing we were trying to build is actually a pretty complex thing. And so we launched the new version of the app, which is 2 times faster. We actually rebuilt the entire way we fetch data between server and client. And the results have been pretty obvious. We've gone from 2 stars to 4 stars in the App Store in just 3 weeks. But to do this, we had to retool the entire company. And that is not an easy task. It's not cheap. It's not easy. We had to change the way our developers thought as well. So there's a lot to it. So you might think, looking at this, that this means the dream is dead. But that's not true. And that's because, there's this core idea, right? The problems we're trying to solve are not everybody else's problems. Firstly, many awesome apps aren't quite as complicated as the Facebook app. Right? We were trying to do something really complex. The second thing is that if you don't have the resources to have a dedicated iOS team, and your priority is to be an app on a lot of platforms, then the PhoneGap approach, the FaceWeb approach, is a perfectly valid approach. If you listen to what Zuck said, he then went on to say something pretty interesting. He said, it's actually not that HTML5 is bad. I'm actually, on the long term, rather excited about it. And then he said this. One of the things that's really interesting is that we have more users daily on our mobile website than we have on our iOS or Android apps combined. That's a pretty amazing stat. So does Facebook care about HTML5? Of course we care about HTML5. It's huge for us. We have 535 million monthly mobile active users, and there's more of them on the mobile web than there are on iOS and Android. Not only that, but daily, 7,000 different devices access our mobile website. So not only is it big for us, it's complex for us. And we have all the same motivations to improve that stack that you guys do. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about today is what we're going to do to make this better. But what does it mean for Facebook and PhoneGap? We are not discontinuing our support for the Facebook PhoneGap plugin. We are going to improve it. Facebook's problems are not everyone's problems. We want to be the social layer for every app on every platform. It's up to you guys what technologies you choose to build. If you have the resources to go deep and you need something super high quality, go for it. But if you want to build something which is more flexible, easier to build in using the technologies we know, and in the future will be as good as native apps, then it's up for you guys to choose that technology. We will build the interfaces between our platform and whatever technology stack you use. So I hope that's clear. Facebook is committed to the web, we're committed to HTML5, and we're committed to PhoneGap. Okay. So now I want to talk a little bit about what we can do to help you guys. Both what we can do by using our influence and our skills, but also what our platform itself can do to help your apps grow, because that's why you build stuff. And there's basically 3 things we can help with: distribution, performance, and monetization. Distribution, about getting new users to download, find, and install your app, and to come back to it more regularly. Performance, I don't just mean CPU and frame rate performance, I mean feature performance. I mean making the mobile web have feature parity with what native apps can do. And lastly, monetization. There's not a huge amount we can do here within the iOS and Android native worlds, but in the mobile web, this needs to be fixed. So I'm just going to go through each of these. Distribution. Native app developers think they have it sussed. And one of the reasons you guys may build in PhoneGap is because you think you need to be in the App Store. And so what do? You build your app, you submit it, you get in there, and then you wait to be featured, and then try and cling on to your place in the top 10. Or You do unusual pricing things to try and get quickly up the charts and try and maintain that position. That tells you there's something slightly unusual about the ecosystem. One of the things Facebook is brilliant at, in fact, it's probably the thing that we do best, is provide distribution to apps. That's what our platform exists to do, and that's how we measure its success. But it's not a platform like an app store. You don't just build an app and put it out into the world for other people to find, for Google to index or list it in some kind of directory. Facebook is a feedback loop. The way it works is you have to make it really easy for the users of your app to share what they're doing in your application. The things they do, the stuff they're interested in, what they are up to. And if you can make it really easy for them to share that content to Facebook, then in return, Facebook will provide you distribution on every platform. So one of the best examples of this is SoundCloud. I can be using SoundCloud on www.soundcloud.com, and the stuff I do on SoundCloud is published to Facebook. One of my friends can see that in their news feeds on iOS, Android, or the mobile web, interact with it, and then discover SoundCloud's app. So one of the main ways this works is through our technology stack called the Open Graph. And that's about linking users with content in any way, not just liking, but by running a route, reading a book, watching a movie. And SoundCloud's implementation is 5 things: playing sounds, liking sounds, posting sounds, following a user, and joining a group. So I don't want to go into too much detail. I just want to show you what it means for SoundCloud as an app developer. Let's assume one of my friends is using SoundCloud on any one of these platforms. If I'm using Facebook in iOS, I'll see a story in my newsfeed. If I click it, I'm going to end up at SoundCloud's native app if I have it installed, and the sound I clicked on is going to start playing. And the way that works is something we call deep linking. We pass a URL that represents that sound in the fragment when we do the app switch. That is not something that currently the Facebook PhoneGap plugin supports, but that's something we're going to add in the future. For now, it's something fairly trivial for you to bootstrap on your side. But here's the killer bit. If you don't have SoundCloud's native iOS app installed, you're going to end up at the App Store to download it and install it. That's a pretty powerful flow. And if you're building PhoneGap apps for iOS and Android, you get this for free. And it works exactly the same on Android as it does on iOS. I'm using Facebook on native Android. I see the same story in my newsfeed. I click it, and I either end up at SoundCloud's native Android app, or I end up at Google Play to download and install it. So suddenly, that user has discovered SoundCloud and got the app on their device. And now it's a new user they've got. Or it's a user who SoundCloud already knows, but they've come back to the app because of some story from one of their friends. And so the amount of distribution that's happening here is not trivial. I want to show you another version of the same flow. This isn't using Open Graph, this is using our requests. And this is a real-time video, no sequences shortened. On the right, we've got a guy using a native iOS app. And this happens to be a native iOS app, but this is completely possible with the Facebook PhoneGap plugin. He's going to send a request to this guy on the left. He gets a push notification from the Facebook iOS app. Now we know his password. He's going to see a notification jewel. It's a bit slow because this is the old version of the app. He's going to click on it. He's going to end up at the iOS App Store. He's going to tap to install. There it is, loading on his device. He's going to fire it up. He's going to log in with Facebook. And boom. That app has a new user. No app stores. No user saying, hey man, this app's really cool, you should check it out. Okay, let me remember it and then like type it into the search bar. That kind of sucks. Like, from one user to another user, having it installed on their phone and using the app in under a minute and a half. So that's a pretty cool flow. And you can build that stuff using web apps or using web tech inside PhoneGap. This is not an insignificant figure. In the last 30 days, we sent users through that flow 150 million times. And that's not 150 million times where they reused an app they already had. This is where we sent them into app stores to download apps for the first time. That's a pretty amazing statistic. So you'd think we'd care about that more than the mobile web, but no. Remember what we said at the start? There are more mobile web users of Facebook than there are iOS and Android users combined. And the flow, of course, is awesome. There's no app store in the middle. I'm just seeing Facebook in my browser. I click the sound, and I end up at m.soundcloud.com, and the sound plays. That is the ideal flow. Do we care? Yeah. We sent users to 7 million mobile websites in the last 30 days. So this stuff is big. There's one other way that we can help, not just with sharing stories, but if you build a socially enabled mobile app, we'll list it in App Center. And App Center drives a ton more distribution on top of the stuff people see in Newsfeed. And you can be listed in App Center just by building a mobile web app, or by building a native iOS or Android app with PhoneGap, or with Objective-C or Java. So if you build a PhoneGap app, you can have it listed in App Center, and we'll drive more distribution from there. So that's how Facebook can directly help you grow your mobile apps. And it's something we care about deeply. It's literally like what we measure. How much distribution did we drive? So the second thing is performance. And by this, I don't really mean CPU and frame rate performance. That's really down to the hardware manufacturers and the browser manufacturers. But what I mean is feature parity, feature performance. And for this, we need standardization. We need all the right people in the room, the guys with the use cases, the network operators, the hardware manufacturers, and the operating systems to agree what's needed and how it should work. And that's why we became a founding member of CoreMob. So CoreMob is a W3C community group, and this is what its charter says. Firstly, agree on core features developers can depend on. Compile related conformance test suites, so we can actually track that conformance. And then provide use cases and scenarios. Without those, it's very easy for this thing to balloon. And so we got the right people in the room. All of these guys are in CoreMob. CoreMob is the largest W3C community group, and it's the second largest W3C group of any type. The only one bigger is the HTML5 group itself. So this group is sitting down regularly and fixing these problems. They've had a ton of face-to-face meetings so far, and one of the things they're tackling right now is app cache, which needs some work. So the fact that this is happening, the fact that Facebook supports it, and we're putting time and energy into making this stuff work, is a good thing. If there's one thing you can take away from what Zuck said in the first part of what he said, he didn't say HTML5 is rubbish. He just said, it's not there yet. So no, Facebook isn't abandoning the cause. We're doubling down on making it work. The second thing in the CoreMob charter is test suites. And so we built and have open sourced and donated Ringmark. So remember acid tests for browsers? Awesome. Ringmark is that for the mobile web. And it has 3 rings: Ring 0, Ring 1, and Ring 2. Ring 0 is what we have today. It's like table stakes. Ring 1 is what we think we need. And we define that, it's the features you need, the smallest number of features you need to build 8 or 9 out of the top 10 native apps. If we can get Ring 1 sorted, the mobile web is onto a winner. Ring 2 is the stuff we think we should get. And the big news is a few weeks ago, the very first browser passed Ring 1. Can anybody guess who it was? Opera? Anyone else? Okay, a lot of people saying the right answer. It's Dolphin Beta. there you go. Here it is, running ringmark. And it runs test 1 pretty easily. And it won't complete the next ring until the previous ring is passed, right? And when I saw, come on, that, we gave a big cheer in the office. That's a big deal. To see a browser, a mobile browser, starting on ring 2 is a big moment for us in the mobile web. So it's not just okay to be able to like codify what you need and test it. You also need to see progress. And that's why it's cool that BrowserScope has built CoreMob into their suite of tests. So now we can track different browsers' performance over time against these tests. We can sometimes see regressions, but we can mostly see progress. So these things are helping to define what the mobile web needs, get the right people in the room with the right use cases, with the right tests to make sure they're making progress to push their mobile web on. And why do we care about this? Because we have more mobile web users than we have iOS or Android users combined. So the very last thing I wanted to talk about was monetization. As I said, this is not something we can really help with in the native world. And this is actually one of the main reasons, I think, why people choose to build native apps. Because you can make money from them much easier than you can on the mobile web. Certain mobile web apps that are funded through display ads, that's a much easier sell. Also, if you're using subscriptions, it's a much easier sell. But if you want purely web apps that take micropayments, take small payments, you're a bit stuck. So there's a ton of mobile web payment systems out there, but many of them require credit card entry. Many of them require stored value. So instead, we've done a bunch of the hard work for you, and we've launched Facebook Mobile Web Payments. And it's now live in 60 countries. And this is how it works. This is a mobile web app. I'm going to buy some coins. And you can tell, this is, look at the time, late last night after the boat cruise. And you can tell I was in Holland. So this is like fresh. I'm going to click on one of these things I want to buy. I get this dialog. I'm going to click buy. And that was it. 7 steps, credit card entry. No. 2 steps with carrier billing. So we've done all that work. So you integrate once with our payment platform, and then we've done all the work to take that payment on whichever platform your user is using. So we think that's a pretty cool thing. And one of the main things that helps to push their mobile web forward is getting developers paid. So that's it. I've talked about today what Facebook's position on the mobile web is, and it's still strong. We want to be the social platform for any app on any platform. If you choose to build in Objective-C, fine. If you choose to build in Java, fine. If you choose to build for the mobile web, we are working to make that platform better, and we have tools that enable you to integrate with us. And there's one other platform we care about. It's PhoneGap. Thanks very much.